In the year 1948, the rubble of the Second World War still scarred the landscape of Europe, a constant, grim reminder of a conflict that had consumed the globe. A fragile peace had settled, but beneath it, a new and dangerous tension was growing, a cold war of ideology that was about to find its first flashpoint. Deep inside Soviet-controlled East Germany lay the city of Berlin, a metropolis carved into sectors, a lonely island of Western democracy in a vast Red Sea. And then, on a dark day in June, the hammer fell. Joseph Stalin, the iron-fisted ruler of the Soviet Union, decided to strangle this outpost of freedom. He sealed the borders, cutting every road, every railway, and every canal. 2.5 million people in West Berlin were suddenly trapped, cut off from food, from medicine, from the very fuel needed to survive the coming winter. Starvation was no longer a possibility. It was a deliberate strategy. The world held its breath, teetering on the brink of World War III. But in the face of this brutal ultimatum, America and its allies chose a path no one thought possible. They decided to fight back, not with tanks and soldiers, but with wings and hope. This is the incredible story of the Berlin Airlift, and the even more secret story of one American pilot, a few sticks of gum, and a promise that would launch a mission of hope known as Operation Vittles. To truly grasp the knife's edge upon which Berlin was balanced, we must look at a map of post-war Germany. The defeated nation was a jigsaw puzzle, divided into 4 occupation zones managed by the principal Allied powers: the United States, Great Britain, France, and the Soviet Union. But the capital city of Berlin, located a full 100 miles inside the Soviet zone, was a special case. It too was divided into 4 sectors. This geographical anomaly meant that West Berlin, the combined American, British, and French sectors, was a vibrant, free-market microcosm, completely surrounded by the stark, imposing reality of Soviet communism. For 3 years, a tense but functional arrangement existed. The Western Allies supplied their sectors via designated air corridors, highways, and railways that the Soviets had agreed to respect. But this island of capitalism was a constant irritant to Joseph Stalin. He saw its reconstruction, its growing prosperity, and its democratic freedoms as a dangerous ideological infection, a symbol of defiance that undermined his total control over Eastern Europe. He was determined to erase this anomaly and absorb all of Berlin into his communist empire, and he was simply waiting for the right moment to make his move. The final catalyst was not a military action, but an economic one. The Western Allies, as part of the broader Marshall Plan to rebuild Europe, recognized that a stable economy was the only path to a lasting peace for Germany. The old German currency, the Reichsmark, was nearly worthless due to rampant inflation. To combat this, in June of 1948, the West introduced a new stable currency, the Deutsche Mark, into their sectors. This single act was a declaration of intent. They were committed to building a prosperous, independent West Germany. Stalin saw this as a direct attack. A successful capitalist West Germany, symbolized by this new, strong currency, was a powerful magnet that threatened to pull nations from his grasp. He responded with fury. In his eyes, this was the final provocation he needed. On June 24, 1948, under the guise of technical difficulties, Soviet forces halted all traffic. Every road was blocked, every railway line was severed, every canal was closed. The trap had been sprung. The blockade of Berlin had officially begun, and a city of millions was now a hostage. The immediate reality for the 2.5 million residents of West Berlin was terrifying. The city's larders were thin. Officials estimated they had enough food to last for just 36 days, and enough coal to power the city and heat its homes for a mere 45 days. The Soviets sat back, confident in their strategy. They believed the Western powers had only 2 options: either make a humiliating political retreat and abandon the city, or try to force an armored convoy through the blockade, an act that would undoubtedly trigger a full-scale war. A war no one in the West wanted. Just 3 years after the last one ended, the American commander in Germany, General Lucius D. Clay, a man known for his unwavering resolve, understood the monumental stakes. He sent a now famous telegram to Washington, stating with chilling clarity, "If we mean that we are to hold Europe against communism, we must not budge." He knew that abandoning Berlin would send a catastrophic message to the world, that American promises were empty, and that the shadow of Soviet domination was destined to spread. The question was, how could they possibly stay? With land and water routes completely severed, only one path remained: the sky. 3 narrow 20-mile-wide air corridors, previously agreed upon by all 4 powers, were the only conduits connecting West Berlin to the outside world. The idea of supplying an entire modern city, a population larger than Philadelphia at the time, entirely by air, was dismissed by many as pure fantasy. The scale was simply incomprehensible. To survive, Berlin needed a minimum of 4,500 tons of supplies every single day. This included everything from flour and dehydrated potatoes to the immense tonnage of coal required to keep the power plants running. The largest airlift in history before this, an operation over the Himalayan mountains during World War II, had moved only a fraction of that amount. Many in the Pentagon and the White House argued it was a logistical impossibility, a heroic but doomed gesture. They advised President Truman to prepare for an inevitable withdrawal, but President Truman, a man known for his plain-spoken determination, saw it differently. He saw a moral test, a line in the sand that had to be drawn. Faced with the choice between a potential World War III and a humiliating surrender, President Truman chose a third option: an audacious, unprecedented display of air power and humanitarian resolve. He famously and simply declared, "We shall stay, period." With that, Operation Vittles was born. The British, equally committed to the city's defense, launched their own parallel mission, Operation Planefair. Together, they would build a virtual bridge in the sky. The initial days were a frantic, disorganized scramble. The primary American transport plane available was the C-47 Skytrain, the venerable workhorse of World War II. But this reliable plane could only carry about 3.5 tons of cargo at a time. It was like trying to fill a swimming pool with a thimble. Pilots were pulled from desk jobs and leave, flying around the clock with little rest. The main airfield in Berlin, Tempelhof, was a relic with a steel plate runway that was already beginning to buckle under the constant strain of landings. The first week's deliveries were dismally low, averaging less than 100 tons a day. The Soviets watched and openly mocked the effort, confident it would collapse within weeks. To orchestrate this chaotic effort into a symphony of precision, the United States called upon its top logistics expert, General William H. Tunner. Tunner was a legend in the world of military transport, the mastermind behind the Hump airlift that supplied China during World War II. When he arrived in Germany, he was appalled by the lack of system. Pilots were landing, shutting down their planes, and heading into the terminal for coffee and a chat, wasting precious time. Tunner immediately imposed a rigid, unforgiving rhythm. He envisioned the airlift not as a series of individual flights, but as a continuous non-stop conveyor belt. He ordered that planes would fly in a stacked formation within the corridors, landing one after another, separated by just 3 minutes. There would be no unscheduled stops. Flight crews were forbidden from even leaving their aircraft upon landing. Instead, mobile snack bars, staffed by German women, would drive out to the planes, handing the crews coffee and donuts through the cockpit window, while teams of German workers swarmed the aircraft, unloading its cargo in a blur of motion. General Tunner's system was a revolution in efficiency. He standardized every procedure, from the flight path to the maintenance checks. If a plane suffered a mechanical breakdown on the runway, it was unceremoniously shoved off onto the grass to be dealt with later, ensuring the endless chain of incoming planes was not broken. But his most impactful decision was to replace the smaller C-47S with the much larger C-54 Skymaster. This 4-engine behemoth could carry 10 tons of cargo, almost triple the payload, and was more reliable in the poor weather that plagued the region. The C-54 became the undisputed hero of the airlift. With these new planes and Tunner's stopwatch-driven discipline, the daily tonnage began to climb dramatically. 1,000 tons a day, 2,000. The impossible was slowly, methodically becoming a reality. The non-stop drone of engines over the city, once a sound of terror during the war, was being transformed into the comforting rhythm of survival, the very heartbeat of a city that refused to die. For the Berliners themselves, life became a grim testament to human endurance. Electricity was strictly rationed. often available for only 4 hours in the middle of the night. The city was dark, the streets quiet and empty. As the bitter German winter set in, the lack of coal became the greatest hardship. Without fuel for heating, families huddled together in single rooms, wrapped in blankets, their breath visible in the frigid air of their own homes. Food rations were meager and monotonous. Powdered eggs, dehydrated potatoes, and tins of Spam became staples. Yet through this hardship, the spirit of the Berliners was not just unbroken. It was forged into a powerful weapon of defiance. They organized their lives around the airlift, volunteering by the thousands to serve as ground crews. They worked in punishing shifts, day and night, unloading the constant stream of planes with ferocious speed, knowing that every second saved meant more food, more coal, more life for their city. This shared struggle created an astonishingly powerful bond between the citizens and the Allied airmen, their former enemies who were now their saviors. It was into this world of high-stakes geopolitics and daily human struggle that a young American pilot named Gail Halvorsen arrived. At 27 years old, Halvorsen was a farm boy from Utah, a man with a quiet demeanor and a strong sense of duty. He was assigned to fly C-54 Skymasters, hauling tons of flour and other bulk cargo from the American bases in West Germany into the besieged city. Like many of his fellow pilots, he was deeply moved by the plight of the Berliners. He had been trained to view the Germans as the enemy, the architects of a devastating war. But now, flying over the ruined city, he saw only civilians, men, women, and especially children, who were being used as pawns in a new and terrifying political game. He felt a growing desire to do something more than just fly his assigned route, something that could connect with them on a human level, to offer a small sign that they were seen not just as a strategic objective, but as people. An idea, simple and profoundly human, was beginning to take root in his mind. One afternoon in July of 1948, after landing his C-54 at Tempelhof, Halvorsen had some time to spare before his scheduled departure. He walked over to the perimeter fence at the edge of the airfield, a place where Berlin's children often gathered to watch the magnificent Rosinenbombers, or Raisin Bombers, as they nicknamed the planes, land and take off. He found a group of about 30 children standing there watching silently. He approached them and, with his limited German, struck up a conversation. He was profoundly struck by their dignity. Unlike children in other parts of the world he had visited, they did not beg for candy or money. They simply expressed their gratitude for the airlift, telling him they knew freedom was more important than food. They understood the stakes better than many adults. As he turned to leave, he impulsively reached into his pocket and found his last 2 sticks of Wrigley's double-mint gum. He broke them into 4 pieces and passed them through the barbed wire. The reaction stunned him. The children who received a piece didn't greedily chew it, but instead tore off small strips of the wrapper to share with the others, so everyone could at least enjoy the sweet smell. It was a moment of incredible selflessness that changed everything for him. Deeply moved by what he had witnessed, Gail Halvorsen made a spontaneous promise to the children. He told them to come back the next day, and he would drop enough gum and chocolate for all of them from his plane as he came into land. Deeply moved by what he had witnessed, Gail Halvorsen made a spontaneous promise to the children. He told them to come back the next day, and he would drop enough gum and chocolate for all of them from his plane as he came into land. Their eyes lit up, but a practical question immediately arose. With planes landing every few minutes, how would they know which one was his? Halvorsen, an experienced pilot, thought for a moment. He told them he would give them a signal. As he flew over the field on his approach, he would rock the wings of his giant 4-engine C-54 back and forth. It was a simple, unique gesture that would make his plane stand out from all the others. He left the airfield that day with a newfound sense of mission, but also with a significant problem. What he was planning was strictly against military regulations. Dropping any unauthorized items from a military aircraft was a serious offense, one that could get him grounded or even court-martialed. He knew the risk, but the image of those children sharing the scent of a gum wrapper was a far more powerful motivator than the fear of punishment. Back at his squadron's base in Rhine-Main, West Germany, Halvorsen explained his plan to his co-pilot and his flight engineer. After a moment of hesitation about the regulations, their sense of adventure and compassion won out, and they enthusiastically agreed to help. That evening, they pooled their personal candy rations, which amounted to a handful of chocolate bars and some sticks of gum. Halvorsen realized he couldn't just throw the candy out of the window. From that height, even a small chocolate bar could injure someone on the ground. He needed a way to slow its descent. He looked around his quarters, and an idea struck him: parachutes. He took out 3 of his clean handkerchiefs, tied strings to the 4 corners of each one, and then fastened the other end securely around the candy. The next day, on his scheduled flight into Berlin, he was filled with nervous excitement. As his C-54 descended on its approach to Tempelhof, he peered out and saw them. The same small crowd of children waiting expectantly by the fence, just as he had promised. The moment of truth had arrived for what he would later call Operation Little Vittles. As his massive aircraft flew over the designated spot near the end of the runway, Gail Halvorsen gave the signal. He gripped the yoke and gently banked the plane left, then right, wiggling the great wings in the sky. On the ground below, a wave of excitement rippled through the group of children. They pointed and cheered, recognizing their pilot. On his command, Halvorsen's flight engineer pushed the 3 tiny candy-laden parachutes out of the aircraft's flare chute. Halvorsen craned his neck to watch as the white handkerchiefs blossomed open and drifted slowly down toward the waiting children. A feeling of immense satisfaction washed over him. It was a small, secret act of defiance against the grim reality of the blockade. For the next several weeks, he and his crew made these secret drops on every flight into Berlin. With each drop, the crowd of children waiting for Uncle Wigglewings, as they would soon call him, grew from 30 to several hundred, all eagerly scanning the skies for the plane that rocked its wings. The secret, of course, couldn't last forever. The operation had become too big, too visible. A German newspaper reporter noticed the strange phenomenon of children gathering at the airfield and the mysterious parachutes. And he wrote a story about the Rosenbomber, or Raisin Bomber, who was dropping treats from the sky. The story was a sensation, and letters from grateful German children began flooding the Tempelhof base, all addressed to Der Schokoladenflieger, the chocolate flyer, or Uncle Wigglewings. The mail eventually found its way to the desk of the airlift commander, General Tunner. One day, Halvorsen was summoned to the office of his own commanding officer. He walked in, fully expecting to be reprimanded and grounded. He confessed to what he had done, but instead of anger, the general simply smiled. He held up a Berlin newspaper with the story on the front page and said, "You've been a busy boy, haven't you?" He understood the incredible positive publicity this story was generating. It was a propaganda victory far more powerful than any official press release. Instead of a court-martial, Gail Halvorsen received official approval to continue and expand his candy-dropping mission. With the official blessing of the top brass, Operation Little Vittles exploded from a covert, 3-man operation into a massive, airlift-wide phenomenon. The story was picked up by the international press and wire services, and it resonated deeply with the American public back home. It was a heartwarming tale of kindness amidst the grim tensions of the Cold War. Soon, donations began pouring in from all corners of the United States. In Chicopee, Massachusetts, a group of schoolchildren started a campaign called the Chicopee Candy Drive, collecting tons of chocolate and gum. The American Confectioners Association and major candy companies like Hershey and Wrigley donated massive quantities of their products. Volunteers from schoolchildren to church groups spent hours tying candy to handkerchiefs and crafting parachutes. What began as one pilot's simple act of compassion had tapped into a deep well of American generosity, transforming into a nationwide movement that directly connected the people of the United States with the children of a besieged Berlin. The logistical challenge of Operation Little Vittles became an operation in itself. At the air bases in West Germany, entire rooms were dedicated to assembling the candy parachutes. Pilots, crews, and their families would gather during their off-duty hours, forming assembly lines to tie candy bars to handkerchiefs and pack them into delivery bags. As the volume of candy grew, so did the ingenuity. They learned to attach multiple candy bars to larger pieces of cloth for a bigger payload. The drops became a cherished part of the routine for many airlift crews, a moment of joy that broke up the monotony and stress of their regular cargo flights. It provided a tangible human connection to their mission. They weren't just hauling bags of flour and coal anymore. They were delivering hope directly into the hands of children. This sweet mission boosted the morale of the entire airlift force, reminding every pilot and crewman of the deeply personal stakes of their historic undertaking. For the children of Berlin, the effect of the candy drops was magical. In a world defined by rubble, rationing, and a constant gnawing hunger, a piece of chocolate falling from the sky was a miracle. It was more than just a sweet treat. It was a profound symbol. It was a message that someone, far away in America, cared about them personally. It was a taste of a life beyond the grey, oppressive reality of the blockade. For a generation of children who had known nothing but war, dictatorship, and destruction, this simple act of kindness was a powerful lesson in humanity and friendship. The sight of Uncle Wiggle Wings' plane became a daily event, a reason to feel joy and to look up at the sky, not with the fear of bombers, but with the excitement and wonder of a child. It gave them a tangible reason to believe in a better future, a future where the sky delivered candy instead of bombs. As Operation Little Vittles captured hearts, the main airlift, Operation Vittles, continued its relentless, punishing pace into the brutal German winter of 1948 to 49. The weather became the new enemy. Dense, freezing fog would descend upon Berlin for days, reducing visibility to near zero. Ice would form on the wings of the planes, making them heavy and difficult to control. Yet, the planes kept coming. Guided by ground-controlled radar, pilots would make harrowing blind landings, trusting their instruments and the controllers on the ground completely. They flew through thunderstorms and blizzards, knowing that any break in the chain would mean a colder night or a hungrier day for the people of Berlin. The daily tonnage records continued to be broken. 5,000 tons a day, 6,000. 7. The constant drone of the C-54 became the city's lullaby, a reassuring sound in the night that proved to the world, and to the Soviets watching just miles away, that Berlin would not be broken. The Soviets did not stand by idly. While they avoided direct military confrontation, they engaged in a relentless campaign of harassment designed to intimidate the Allied pilots and disrupt the airlift. Soviet fighter jets, including the advanced MiG-15, would fly dangerously close to the unarmed cargo planes in the crowded air corridors, sometimes passing within just a few feet of their wings. They would perform aggressive aerobatic maneuvers, buzzing the lumbering C-54s to create turbulence and terror. At night, they would shine powerful searchlights into the cockpits of landing planes, attempting to blind the pilots at the most critical moment of their approach. They even conducted live-fire artillery exercises perilously close to the air corridors, but these tactics backfired. They did not break the will of the Allied air crews. Instead, they strengthened their resolve. Each pilot who successfully navigated these threats and landed their cargo safely felt a renewed sense of purpose, a personal victory in this high-stakes war of nerves. By the spring of 1949, it was clear that the airlift was a logistical masterpiece and an overwhelming success. General Tunner, wanting to deliver a final, decisive psychological blow to the Soviets, planned a record-breaking event for Easter Sunday. He called it the Easter Parade. His goal was to demonstrate, beyond any doubt, that the airlift could sustain the city indefinitely and at a level far exceeding its basic needs. For a full 24-hour period, the entire airlift machine went into overdrive. Every available plane was put into service. Ground crews worked with a frantic, perfectly synchronized intensity. For 24 hours straight, planes took off and landed in an unbroken stream. By the end of the Easter Parade, they had achieved a staggering result. 1,398 flights had delivered nearly 13,000 tons of cargo in a single day. That meant a plane was landing in Berlin, on average, every 62 seconds. It was a spectacular display of air power and logistical genius that sent an undeniable message to Moscow. The blockade was a failure. The stunning success of the Easter Parade was the final nail in the coffin for the Soviet blockade strategy. It was now painfully obvious to Stalin that he could not starve West Berlin into submission. The airlift was not just working. It was becoming more efficient and more powerful with each passing week. Furthermore, the blockade had become a massive public relations catastrophe for the Soviet Union. The global narrative was simple and powerful. The Soviets were attempting to starve millions of innocent civilians, while the Western democracies were the benevolent saviors, flying in food and hope. The story of the candy bombers, in particular, had created an image of American generosity and kindness, that Soviet propaganda simply could not overcome. On May 12, 1949, after 324 days of defiance, the Soviet Union quietly lifted the blockade. The roads, rails, and canals were opened. The siege of Berlin was over. The first great confrontation of the Cold War had ended, and the West had won a resounding victory without ever firing a shot. The moment the news broke, a wave of jubilation swept through West Berlin. When the first British and American truck convoys rolled into the city on the reopened highways, they were greeted by massive, cheering crowds. People wept openly in the streets, celebrating the end of their long and terrifying ordeal. They had faced down a superpower, and with the steadfast support of their allies, they had preserved their freedom. The final statistics of the Berlin Airlift were, and remain, astounding. In total, Allied planes completed over 278,000 flights, delivering more than 2.3 million tons of supplies. This colossal effort, however, was not without its price. The dangerous flying conditions and mechanical failures claimed the lives of 31 American and 39 British airmen, as well as 13 German civilians working on the ground. These men are honored as heroes who made the ultimate sacrifice not in combat, but in a mission of peace. Their memory preserved at the solemn airlift memorial at Tempelhof Airport. And what of Operation Little Vittles? By the time the airlift officially ended, Gail Halvorsen and the many pilots who joined his cause had dropped over 23 tons of candy, delivered by more than 250,000 tiny handmade parachutes. This sweet mission achieved something that tons of coal and flour could not. It helped to fundamentally rebuild the relationship between the American and German people. It melted away the lingering bitterness of the recent war, replacing it with a sense of shared humanity and genuine friendship. The image of the candy bomber became an enduring symbol of American goodwill, a powerful tool of soft power that did more to win the hearts and minds of the German populace than any treaty or political maneuver. It was a lesson in public diplomacy taught not by statesmen, but by a young pilot with 2 sticks of gum and a big heart. The legacy of Gail Halvorsen, the original candy bomber, extended far beyond the end of the airlift. He became an international icon of compassion and American generosity. He continued his distinguished career in the Air Force, even helping to develop reusable spacecraft for the military. Throughout his life, which spanned an incredible 101 years, he was celebrated as a hero in both the United States and a grateful reunified Germany. He frequently returned to Berlin, where he was always greeted with overwhelming warmth and affection. He would meet with men and women, now grandparents themselves, who would tearfully recount their memories of standing by the fence at Tempelhof as children, waiting for his plane to wiggle its wings. Their stories were a constant affirmation of the profound impact of his simple act of kindness, a testament to how one person's choice can ripple through time and change the world in unexpected ways. The Berlin Airlift was a pivotal event that reshaped the geopolitical landscape of the 20th century. Its success provided the crucial momentum for the formation of a formal Western military alliance. In 1949, spurred by the clear and present danger demonstrated by the blockade, the United States, Canada, and 10 European nations signed the North Atlantic Treaty, creating NATO. The core principle of NATO, that an attack on one member is an attack on all, was a direct response to the Soviet aggression against Berlin. The airlift served as a powerful real-world demonstration that the Western democracies had the political will and the logistical capability to stand together against threats to their freedom. It drew a firm line on the map of Europe and established the framework for collective security that would define the West's posture for the entire duration of the Cold War. The story of the candy bombers offers a timeless and powerful lesson on the true nature of influence. In an era dominated by the terrifying logic of nuclear deterrence and military might, it was an act of simple human decency that scored one of the most significant public relations victories of the Cold War. It bypassed the language of threats and diplomacy, speaking directly to the universal human desire for kindness and hope. It showed that compassion is not a weakness, but a profound strength. It perfectly illustrated the concept of soft power, the ability to shape the preferences of others through appeal and attraction, rather than coercion. The image of a chocolate bar floating down from the heavens did more to advance the cause of democracy in Germany than any piece of propaganda, proving that sometimes the most effective way to win a conflict of ideas is not to fight, but to share. The airlift also marked a profound turning point in German-American relations. It was the moment the relationship transformed from that of occupier and occupied to one of partners and friends. The shared trial of the blockade, with Americans and British risking their lives to feed and supply the German people, forged an incredibly powerful bond of trust and mutual respect. The citizens of West Berlin saw firsthand that the Western Allies were not conquerors, but protectors of their freedom. This deep well of goodwill laid the essential foundation for West Germany's integration into the Western Alliance and its emergence as a cornerstone of European democracy. The candy bombers, in particular, helped to heal the deep psychological wounds of the war, allowing a generation of Germans to see Americans not as soldiers, but as generous, kind-hearted people. It was the beginning of a friendship that would endure for generations. Ultimately, the story of the Berlin Airlift and the candy bombers is a story about choices. The Soviets chose to use hunger as a weapon. They chose intimidation and coercion. The Western Allies, led by the United States, chose a different path. They chose creativity, endurance, and compassion. And within that larger choice, Gail Halvorsen made his own individual choice. He chose to look past regulations and see the humanity in the children standing behind a barbed wire fence. His choice set off a chain reaction of kindness that rippled across an ocean, inspiring thousands of ordinary citizens to participate in his mission of hope. It serves as an enduring reminder that history is not merely the product of grand impersonal forces. It is shaped by the cumulative impact of countless individual decisions by people who, when faced with a choice between cynicism and hope, dare to choose hope. The Berlin Airlift stands as one of the most remarkable achievements of the 20th century, a logistical triumph, a political victory, and a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. It saved a city from capitulation and demonstrated to the world that the forces of freedom would not yield to tyranny. But etched forever within this epic saga of aviation and strategy is the smaller, more personal story of Uncle Wigglewings. It is the story that truly defines the soul of the mission. It reminds us that behind every historical statistic are human beings, and that the most powerful connections are forged not through power, but through empathy. The legacy of Gail Halvorsen and his fellow candy bombers is not written in treaties or displayed in museums of war. It is written in the hearts of a generation of Berliners who learned to look up at the sky not with fear, but with hope, waiting for the sweet taste of freedom delivered by a chocolate bar on a tiny handmade parachute.